Hi everyone, it's Don and I hope you're having a fantastic day. Well, it's day one, our first full day at sea here on the Harmony of the Seas, and we're having some fun, but I also got to tell you about that one news story about the 800 cases of COVID on one ship, because it's kind of interesting now. So when first the stories came out, this cruise ship on the Majestic Princess is on an 12-day cruise. And it was reported about halfway through they started getting symptoms of COVID on board. In fact, they've had COVID on board for the last 2 sailings before that, but it really broke out on this sailing. So much so that when they started testing all 3,300 passengers on board and crew, over 800 passengers tested positive. And then they said all the protocols are going to take place where everyone's going to isolate, and then everybody will isolate when they get off the ship, and nobody will be mixing with public and all things like that. It sounded exactly the way we did it here in North America when we reopened, right? If you caught COVID, you would either be put up in a hotel or you would be in your stay on the ship until you were deemed clear. Your quarantine period was over, and then you would go home. Okay, that sounded reasonable, but there are some concerns going on right now because of the new easing of restrictions in Australia, where it says you no longer have to quarantine even if you test positive, as long as you're showing no symptoms. So pretty much everybody of the 800 people were showing like sniffles or no symptoms whatsoever on the ship, which means they were all free to just get off the ship. They did recommend to every one of the passengers that they should indeed continue their isolation period for up to 5 days, but it wasn't mandatory. Now what they did do is they didn't just let them off the ship and away you go. They escorted every single passenger who had tested positive for COVID off the ship with crew members, and they did not put them in public transportation. They had arranged transportation from the ship at that point. Fine, but is some of that transportation flying them to an airport and they're flying home? Was that part of it? Now, this cruise, they still have restrictions in place where 95% of the passengers had to be fully vaccinated. Everybody had to test getting on the ship. But when you are under complete lockdown and you begin opening up, things eventually, you always had that lift, that immediate, push where you get that bump in cases and then it normalizes again and goes back down. But I found it really strange seeing how severe Australia was locked down that they just said, okay, you don't have to quarantine when you get off the ship. It's up to you. Yes, we did put you on public transportation to get to the airport or the train, but we just got you to the airport and then you mixed with everybody there. Is that the way it worked? I'm not, from all accounts, it sounds like that's the way it worked. They didn't have to take the public bus to get to the airport. They arranged a bus for them to get to the airport, and then they were released into the airport. It just sounds like, well, you might as well have just put them on public transport. I guess if you're going to the airport, you're leaving the country. That was the mix, but you also have people arriving from, I don't know, it just seemed awful strange. So there were a lot of questions going on, as this is the major outbreak that's happened since the reopening in Australia. So we'll see what happens. Australia has had an uptick in their cases. I think it was 12,400 or so reported in the last week. A few deaths as well related to COVID. Not sure of the breakdown, not sure if it's vaccinated, unvaccinated, age groups, any of that. But when you see people just say, when they say they're going to quarantine and it's suggested to be quarantine, if you're a person who's skeptical and worried about COVID, this could be concerning, and I completely understand that situation. All in all, I would say it's a mild worry with the way the cases are nowadays, but I'm not an expert. Nobody's an expert. We have to go with what we all feel ourselves. Well, speaking of here on the ship, we arrived. We're on the Harmony of the Seas. The guys can hardly believe the size of the ship. Last night we had dinner at Jamie's Italian on board. Was absolutely delicious. We also had went out to see one of the game shows last night, Majority Rules. Not a fan of where it's held. Was held in the Comedy Club. It's not really a venue for game shows, if you will. It's not like Princess Live. Was not a fan of that. It didn't seem to have the atmosphere that I would see on other ships. So that's where I'm saying with that. But then we did go see the Aqua Show, which was quite good. I have a feeling some of it might have been changed because it was a little windy last night. We saw the high diver last night, and that wire was just shaking back and forth. Like he was having a hard time keeping that thing steady. So I can only imagine high diving from the upper levels. It happened very few times during the number. Most of the numbers were dance numbers in the water, very energetic. We sat in the wet seats, so yeah, we enjoyed it all. We got up close and personal with all the water. We got soaked a little bit, and it was a lot of fun. Even a limited show was still a whole lot of fun. Tonight we get to see Greece. We're trying to arrange. Here's the hard part that's going on right now. We went down and we made our dining reservations in person. We bought the ultimate dining package. And there's 4 of us in our group. And we went and we booked our ultimate dining package. And every night had something going on, had a lunch for today going on. Then we left and we noticed that there was only like 4 of our reservations out of the 9. Went back to the girl. She says, yeah, don't worry. When it updates, they'll all show up on the app and everything. Well, it's the next day. They still haven't shown up on the app. I have a feeling what happened is when we booked, if you book a reservation, say for a show, and then you try and book a reservation for the same show later on in the cruise, they will cancel that first reservation you made. I have a feeling as she was making our dining reservations, we booked day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4. And then when we went to repeat a restaurant on day 5, it canceled whatever day we had booked earlier. And then we booked another one on day 6, it canceled another one. Because I don't see any reservations more than once. And we did book multiple like the same, we booked, Chops Grill twice. We booked Sabor twice. We booked the Jamie Oliver, Italian, twice. It's not there. It's only there once. So I had a feeling it canceled our other reservations, which if we'd have known that, we would have just booked our first 4 days and then gone and rebooked, after we ate at one place, we'd rebook it for the next time. So yeah, it's a little rough right now organizing that stuff. Good news, Wi-Fi is pretty fast. Very happy with that. But yeah, the dining right now is interesting. We got all our shows reserved, but the dining has been an issue. Well, I hope you appreciate this little update. I'll show you a lot more of the ship. After all, it's only early morning on the first full day at sea. We got some stuff we've been challenging each other to do during this cruise, so it should be interesting to see what happens. I hope you'll follow along and see us make complete fools of ourselves, because I assure you that's what's going to happen. Well, I hope you liked the video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more tips, more tricks, more travel vlogs from around the world, hit that subscribe button. Until next time, have yourself a safe and a great vacation.